Thanks, Johnny. Hi, everybody. As he said, my name's Jackson Bazley. I'm an executive director for EY, or Ernst & Young. I work in our media and entertainment advisory services practice, focused in the digital ad ecosystem. If you guys want to have a seat. Last year, my team and I did a study on behalf of the IAB in the U.S. to study the supply chain corruption issues plaguing the digital advertising industry, and specifically in the areas of invalid traffic, copyright infringement, and malvertising. Interestingly enough, the study found that each one of these three areas by itself had over $1 billion, with a B, $1 billion impact to the US digital advertising ecosystem. And what's further, we actually found linkages between these, that there was a bit of a cycle or a chain of fraud, if you will, that permeates through each of the elements. Today we have three different presentations for you, followed by a panel discussion. First, we're going to have Chris Olson and Matt O'Neill from the Media Trust. Turns out that when you build a system that's capable of analyzing and identifying malware-laden advertising at scale, that gives you a very good window into other issues in the ecosystem as well. They're going to come up and talk a bit about both data leakage and a little bit about malware and how those have impacts on our ecosystem and what they're doing about that. We're then going to have Michael Tiffany and Sylvain Leborn. Michael's from White Ops, Sylvain is from Havas, and they're going to talk a bit about combating ad fraud, and specifically the scope of fraud, how the bad guys make money, no taking notes, and how to win the fight. And then the third presentation will be George Ivey from the Media Rating Council, who's going to talk about what the U.S. industry is doing through standards and measurement practices to address the issues associated with invalid traffic. With that, I'd like to invite Matt and Chris to come up and get us started.
Thanks, Jackson. Hi, I'm Matt O'Neill. I'm the General Manager for the Media Trust here in Europe. Just quickly, a little bit about the Media Trust in case you've not heard of us. We're a company that provides site scanning and ad tag scanning for any player in the digital ecosystem. So we essentially will perform a scan as a user would or a browser would, and we glean all sorts of different data points from that scan. So assuming the role of the user effectively to see what's going on behind the scenes. Very quickly, we consider digital publishers to be really anyone who is pushing information to the web. That could be a traditional publisher like a newspaper or a TV station, or it could also be a brand that is creating websites and pushing those out there for consumer information or other ways to engage with consumers. And from that, we noticed three main categories of vulnerabilities around data leakage, malware exposure, and privacy violations. And what we're able to do is protect consumers and advertisers from data leakage. We're able to expose malware and risks to site owners, and we're able to ensure that privacy is maintained throughout the ecosystem. And all of that adds up to a much better consumer experience, which prevents ad blockers and things like that. So to take a look at the types of brand websites we're talking about, here are three well-known brands, Budweiser, Gillette, and Colgate. And you may think that these sites are fully owned by the brands that build them and push them out, but that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot going on behind the scenes on a website. So as you can see, there's some things that are outward facing. There are things that help build that website, that push the content out to the consumer. And then there are other things that are going on behind the scenes that are measuring engagement, dropping cookies, really performing the plumbing that's necessary to build the web and maintain a user experience. So some of those are video, and there might be advertising on that site. There might be content recommendations. There may be other aspects to the website that people engage with. And each of those is actually opening up a little door to potential bad behavior for consumers. So let's take a look. What we can do is we can scan websites. We can put in a site and scan it and see what's going on behind the scenes. And to take a look at what's going on behind these three websites, not to call anyone out in particular, just to call on well-known brands. So for instance, with the Budweiser site, we can see that there's 24 separate tech providers or vendors that are doing something on that page. There are 29 different domains being referenced. And there's some bizarre cookies on there. We see this all the time, but you'll see there's a 20-year-old cookie on there that was dropped by MySpace. So that's an interesting one to have lingering out there. We see things for 12 months, et cetera. We see here on the Gillette site, we see 14 domains, 10 vendors. We have a 5-year-old Audience Science cookie. And then on the Colgate site, 17 vendors, 20 domains, and a bunch of cookies as well. So all of these are opening up potential vulnerabilities, and Chris will take a look at that in just a second. But this is just to show what's going on behind even relatively simple brand websites. So in addition to look at these three, we ran a report to look at the top 100 retailers to see what we could find in aggregate going on behind the scenes there. And without kind of just reading this chart to you, there are a couple of things I found really interesting. There's multi-brand sites which may have advertising and extensive third-party activity. We saw about 2 times as much activity going on behind the scenes on those multi-brand sites as we did on the single-brand sites. 25% of the domains are actually dropping cookies. We don't know if people are aware of that or not. We don't know if the people operating those sites are aware of any potential privacy violations in local regions or not, but they do open up risk and a potential liability for the site owners. We see a high of about 131 domains dropped on a call, and we see 144 cookies being dropped. So all in all, there is a lot of activity going on behind even brand websites. And we want to make sure that brands are aware of this and that they are in control of, if not the every call on the page, at least the information that's going on so they can act on it and be aware of it. So with that, I'm going to throw over to Chris Olson, CEO and co-founder of the Media Trust. Chris?